In January 2022, Russia reportedly began using kamikaze drones against Ukrainian forces. These unmanned aerial vehicles are cheap, easy to build, and deadly if flown correctly. The question is, how do they work? First, we'll take a look at the history of suicide drones. We'll then examine two particular models, the Shahed-136 and the Finally, we'll discuss their attack and evasion techniques, as well as their psychological impact and future use in warfare. So, let's get started. Before diving into the specifics of modern kamikaze drones, it's important to understand the broader historical context. Suicide drones aren't a new invention. In fact, the concept dates back to World War II. During that conflict, several countries experimented with remotely piloted aircraft that would crash into their targets, delivering a payload of explosives or other harmful substances. However, these early attempts were crude and inaccurate, and the development of suicide drones largely stalled after the war ended. The idea resurfaced during the Cold War when both the United States and the Soviet Union explored the use of unmanned aerial vehicles for intelligence gathering and reconnaissance missions. But it was until the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that suicide drones really came into their own. These conflicts saw the rise of small, cheap, and effective drones that could be launched in large numbers and used to great effect. One notable example was the Iranian-made Shahed drone, which was used by insurgents to attack coalition forces in Iraq. These attacks often involved flying the drone into a military base or checkpoint, detonating the explosives on impact and causing significant casualties. But despite their effectiveness, suicide drones were still relatively uncommon until recently. This is because they have several drawbacks compared to more conventional forms of attack, such as manned aircraft or cruise missiles. First, suicide drones are vulnerable to air defenses even more so than manned aircraft since they lack any form of active defense such as guns or missiles. Second, they require a skilled operator who can navigate the drone towards its target successfully. And third, they are one-use weapons, which means that their cost per mission is relatively high. Despite these drawbacks, suicide drones have seen increased use in recent years, particularly in the Syrian civil war, where Russia, the US, and Turkey have all reportedly used them extensively. So what exactly makes these devices so appealing? Well, the answer lies in their simplicity, low cost, and effectiveness. Suicide drones are typically small, lightweight, and easy to manufacture, which makes them ideal for use in situations where resources are limited. Their small size also makes them difficult to detect and intercept, giving them a significant advantage over more traditional forms of attack. Moreover, they can be equipped with a variety of payloads, including explosives, chemical agents, and even biological weapons, making them versatile tools for a wide range of military operations. Now that we've covered the history and appeal of kamikaze drones, it's time to take a closer look at two particular models, the Shahed-136 and the Switchblade. These two drones represent different approaches to suicide attacks, but both are highly effective in their own right. Let us start with the Shahed-136. This Iranian-made drone has been widely used in the Syrian civil war and has also reportedly been deployed in conflicts in Yemen, Libya, and Ukraine. The Shahed-136 is a simple device consisting of a small motor, a propeller, wings, and a warhead. It is typically launched from the ground using a small launcher and is guided towards its target using a combination of pre-programmed flight paths and real-time control by an operator. Once the drone is close enough to its target, the operator detonates the warhead remotely, causing maximum damage. The Shahed-136 has a range of around 240 miles and a top speed of approximately 130 miles per hour. It is relatively small, with a wingspan of only 6 feet, which makes it difficult to detect and intercept. The drone's warhead is relatively small, typically ranging from 2 to 4 pounds of explosives. While not devastating on its own, the warhead is more than enough to cause significant damage and casualties when flown directly into a building or position occupied by enemy troops. Now let's move on to the Switchblade. Unlike the Shahed-136, the Switchblade is a more sophisticated piece of technology. It is a multi-wing drone that is designed to resemble a flying bomb. It is larger than the Shahed-136, with a wingspan of up to 10 feet and a length of around 8 feet. The Switchblade is more complex, with a more powerful engine and a larger warhead. It is also more expensive, with each drone costing around $2 million. but this increased complexity and cost come with significant benefits. The Switchblade has a much longer range than the Shahed-136, with some models capable of traveling up to 2,500 miles without refuel. It can also carry a much larger payload, with some versions equipped with a 40-pound warhead. The Switchblade is primarily used for surveillance and reconnaissance missions, but it can also be used for direct attacks. When used in an attack role, the Switchblade is typically launched from the air using a small launcher similar to a bazooka. Once the drone is in the air, an operator guides it towards its target using a combination of pre-programmed flight paths and real-time control. Like the Shahed-136, the Switchblade's warhead is detonated remotely, causing maximum damage. Both the Shahed-136 and the Switchblade are effective in their own right, but ultimately their success depends on a number of factors, including the skill of the operator, the quality of the intelligence, and the strength of the target's defenses. Now that we've covered the anatomy of these devices, let's take a deeper dive into their attack and evasion techniques. As mentioned earlier, suicide drones are often used in situations where traditional forms of attack are ineffective or too costly. For example, in areas with dense civilian populations, it can be difficult to use precision weapons such as guided bombs or missiles for fear of civilian casualties. But suicide drones offer a solution by providing a small, cheap, and effective way to take out Havalia targets. One of the key advantages of suicide drones is their ability to be launched in large numbers, overwhelming air defenses and increasing the chances of at least one drone reaching its target. This tactic is often referred to as a swarm attack, where multiple drones are launched simultaneously, confusing and overwhelming air defenses. In a swarm attack, even if some drones are shot down, there's a good chance that others will reach their target undetected. The use of multiple drones also increases the psychological impact of the attack, creating a sense of chaos and confusion among the defenders. But suicide drones aren't just used in offensive operations. They can also be used defensively to protect important positions or areas. For example, in areas where there is a risk of infiltration by enemy forces, suicide drones can be used to patrol key locations and identify any intruders. Once an intruder is detected, the drone can be used to attack and neutralize the threat. This can be particularly useful in situations where there are not enough troops available to provide adequate security. Suicide drones are also valuable in intelligence gathering and surveillance operations. Because they are small and difficult to detect, they can operate for long periods of time without being noticed. This makes them ideal for tasks such as monitoring enemy movements or gathering intelligence on enemy positions. The high-resolution cameras and other sensors that can be mounted on suicide drones allow for the collection of detailed information that can be used to plan future attacks or defensive operations. Despite their many advantages, suicide drones are not without their weaknesses. As we discussed earlier, they are vulnerable to air defenses and can be intercepted before reaching their target. To mitigate this risk, operators often use a combination of techniques to confuse and deceive air defense systems. For example, the use of decoys or electronic warfare can be used to divert the attention of air defenses away from the actual suicide drones. Additionally, suicide drones can be equipped with countermeasures such as flares or chaff to specifically target heat-seeking missiles, making them more difficult to intercept. Another weakness of suicide drones is their reliance on human operators. While some drones can be programmed to fly autonomously, most still require a human operator to guide the drone towards its target. This introduces a potential point of failure, as a skilled operator is necessary to ensure the success of the mission. However, this also presents an opportunity for psychological warfare. The threat of a suicide attack can be enough to cause the defenders to become fearful or even panic, leading to a less than robust defense. Additionally, the use of suicide drones can cause defenders to waste valuable resources defending against the drone attacks, diverting them from more important tasks. This can be particularly effective in urban areas where there are a lot of buildings and other structures that can be used by suicide drones to hide and approach their targets undetected. As we've already discussed, the use of suicide drones is not a new phenomenon, but their increased use in recent conflicts has raised concerns about their legality and ethics. Many argue that suicide drones violate international law because they intentionally target civilian areas and civilian infrastructure, causing unnecessary loss of life and damage to property. Others argue that suicide drones are simply a new form of warfare that should be treated the same way as other military tactics, such as aerial bombing runs. Ultimately, the legality and ethics of suicide drones will continue to be debated as these devices become more sophisticated and more widely used. So are kamikaze drones the future of warfare? Well, it's possible. Their low costs, effectiveness, and psychological impact make them an attractive option for militaries around the world. However, their vulnerability to air defenses and reliance on human operators means that they are not a complete solution. Nevertheless, suicide drones are likely to continue to be used in a variety of conflicts, both large and small. As such, it is important for militaries and policymakers to develop effective strategies for dealing with this new threat. This brings us to the end of our video on how kamikaze drones work. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about anti-drone technology, please give it a like and leave a comment below. Your feedback helps us create more informative and engaging content for you. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos on unmanned aerial vehicles.